Yeah. So I'll even go before that, just to kind of
Okay.
give a background of why I live where I live now. But grew up in a really small town where I live now. There are about 3,000 people here. And I'm one of the people that were just like, get me out of here. I've got to leave here. It's too small. I need to see the world. Went to school, Bowling Green, Kentucky at Western University. And then there I was like, okay, I need to go to a bigger city now. So went to Louisville, got a job there, um, met my husband, started a family, and I was working at a big corporation in sales, and I loved it. I love sales. I love climbing the ladder. I'm a competitive person, always have been involved in sports. I'm very driven, and I'm kind of an executor. So I'll give an example. Like I still have my mom's voice in my head where she's like, okay, you're gonna graduate high school, you're gonna go to college, and then you're, because no one in our family did, and then you're gonna graduate college and you're gonna get a job, and you don't need a man to do anything, and you can do this all on your own. I want you to be able to stand on your own. And I kind of just had that in my mind and I just did it. Not that it was easy, it was hard. I was an idiot in college, partying, being crazy. Still don't know how I'm alive to this day, to be honest. And that's just kind of how I am. I'm like an executor. So then when I went to, fast forward, and I'm at my corporate job, that was just my thing. Like, all right, I got to get the next job. I got to get the next job. And I had a goal. I actually left that job when I was 33. And I had a goal. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a VP by 40. I had another woman that I was kind of looking up to, and she had told me that. And I was like, man, that's a good goal. I'm going to do that. And it got to the point where two of my kids were having issues at school and I couldn't help them because I wasn't home. And one of my children I was getting called to come pick them up frequently. And I kept, like, every year I'd tell my husband and say, like, we just can't keep doing this. I need to be the CEO of our family. I need to run our family. Like, it's just craziness. Like, laundry wasn't getting done, no cooking. We were fighting over who got called when one of our kids were sick. We're worried we're going to lose our job. Most families deal with this when both parents work. We both had high stress jobs and important jobs to both of us. We're both bringing in about the same amount of money. We used to play a game called Who Can Make More Money a Year, which we kind of still try to play, but just highly competitive jobs, and kind of had those golden handcuffs where you feel like stuck and you can't leave. So that's kind of where I was in Louisville. And then the kind of turning point there was I just couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't with my kids. I was stressed. I was that weekend warrior that I see a ton of my friends doing, where you don't even talk to them on the weekends because that's their only time to relax and they don't have time for anything else. That's how we were. And started learning about real estate. I was listening to podcasts, reading books for about, I would say it was almost 2 years until we bought our first property. And then after that happened, we kind of made the decision of like, okay, we need to figure out how I can leave my job.
What podcasts, what books? Did you have anything? Sorry, I'm looking
Oh
at you again.
gosh, all the things.
I mean, was there a specific one that just hit you like as you were reading it? Is there something that you suggest all the time to people?
Yeah. So of course, everybody says it, but Rich Dad Poor Dad was the book of, okay, that opened my eyes to, I'm going to sit here and make money for someone else for the rest of my life and just be this little part of that organizational chart and work my butt off and spend all this time working on someone else's dream. And for what? And it just kind of gave me that different point of view that there's another way to do it. I also started listening to like entrepreneurial type podcasts. So I was listening to Business Wars, which just gets my mind going on different ways to make money and the hustle part of those sort of things. So kind of learning what other people were doing. How I Built This was one of them, where I started listening how different entrepreneurs started their journey and how they did that. And then the second book after Rich Dad Poor Dad was the Cash Flow Quadrants. That really opens your mind to see like where your money's going and how it could be better used, and how you can work less hours and make more during those hours. Also read The 4 Hour Work Week. That one's a really great one. And then I really loved David Green's Burr book because it taught me about compound interest and how you can keep using the same dollar over and over again. Those are like my big ones on that subject.
Awesome. Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was for me too. I've got kind of I consider him a mentor. I don't know if he considers himself my mentor, but I've got a guy, he's been on the podcast. I've talked to him a handful of times. He's an investor, real estate investor. And he's the one that told me, I said, what, knowing where I'm at in my life now and what I'm trying to accomplish, what do you suggest as far as books, podcasts, whatever? And he said, Cash Flow Quadrant. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm like, yeah, like 10 years ago. And he's like, okay, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad again. And then I want you to do Cash Flow Quadrant twice. And I'm not a huge reader, but I love listening to books.
Yeah.
And so actually we bought that California property that I've talked about on here and about, and I ended up having to do a lot of the rehab myself, and it's a 5-hour drive. And so like the first trip down and back, I'd listened to Cash Flow Quadrant all the way. And so like I just hammered out both those books, I think like, I was going to say 4, but probably 3 times each on those trips down there and back. And so like I really just hammered it home for me. And yeah, I've actually done a little bit of speaking now, and that's something I hit on with the Cash Flow Quadrant is I've always been, like self-employed, and I thought I was a business owner. And so it was kind of it separated those two for me and told me the steps I needed to do to get into being a business owner. Right. And so anyone that's listening to this and you want to even just better yourself, even in your own, if you're working for someone, some of those books can still help you do that just to be a better person, to be more efficient. But definitely if you're getting into real estate or even your own business, both of those I think are a must. Awesome. So when you told me, how many properties you have and you're doing that, like I knew you were obviously in it and you were doing it, but I didn't know you had that many. So can you talk about maybe just tell me what you have again, maybe break down if there's anything that you feel like you need to talk more about, and then we'll dive into a couple of them.
Okay, sure. So our current portfolio is we have 2 mobile home parks and 1 hotel that has 10 doors, but it also has a living quarters and an office, and we've converted that to long-term. So every person in there has a 6-month or 12-month lease. We also have 3 duplexes, and I'm trying to think because we sold some things. And then I have 1 Airbnb that's just a single family. I did a few flips. So we did 3 flips before, did 1 wholesale deal, which now is illegal in Kentucky. So can't do that anymore without having a license. I think that's it.
And then, so on the Real Estate Investing School podcast with Brody, you guys talked about one of the mobile home parks. So I would like to talk about something else if we can, like a different deal.
Yeah.
And is that your most recent one?
My most recent property that we bought was in December, and that was our Airbnb.
Okay. Is there a property one more than another that you think maybe we could pull some lessons out? Maybe there were some struggles we can talk, and then hopefully
for sure.
some triumphs.
I can talk about the hotel because I'm really in the messy middle of that. Okay. Like it's not a success story yet. Maybe some people think that it is, but that's really something that I want real estate investors or people starting out to know is it takes a couple years to do. And then I can kind of talk about how I've wanted to just sell it. I've even said that to my property manager, like, let's just sell it. Because it is very tough in that first couple of years when you take on a value add property. Yeah.
And even in our situation with Amanda and I in this property in California, I swear it's a weekly thing. I think about punting on it. So I feel the same thing.
Get rid of it.
But yeah, I'll let you just kind of dive in. How did you, is it one of those kind of how you found it and move forward like that?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I'll talk about how I found it. So I invest in my backyard. It's not just about like being comfortable. I would definitely buy something out of state. I've made offers on things. Haven't really been aggressive in like going after things out of state, but There aren't a ton of investors here. And so I like doing things in my backyard because I'm going to offer either jobs to people here or a place to live, which we are in desperate need of rentals here. So that's one of the reasons I kind of stick around where I am. So I saw this hotel and it looked like it needed some love. And this one, I just called the hotel to see if I could figure out who the owner was. Well, I called and the actual owner answered it. And I said, would you be willing to sell? And he was like, I don't know, maybe. I'm not really sure. I'm really into a couple things. Can you holler back at me in like a couple weeks? So like, okay, put it down on my calendar. I'm going to call him back in a couple weeks. Called him back. Hey, did you think about a price to sell it for? Are you ready to sell? Let me think about it some more. I'm really, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of kept doing that. I think that went on for a couple months. Out of the blue, I get a call from the owner. He's like, all right, I've got my number. I'm ready to sell. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to change my number on this, and I'll sell it for this. If not, I'll keep it because I've finally figured out how to make money on it. I'm like, okay, what's your number? So he tells me, and he wanted to sell it for $325,000. I had done the numbers before on what I wanted to do with it and what I thought could make it cash flow. And this number was great for me. It was right in the perfect range. So I didn't want to insult him. We had built a relationship. I had gone and viewed the property before. He's an investor too, have a lot of respect for him. So I wanted him to get out what he wanted, and it was still a good deal for me. So we went with the 325. This is another one of those deals that I talked about. I actually bought this 1 month apart from the one that I spoke about on the Real Estate Investing School Real Deal podcast. And I talked about in that podcast that I didn't have any money. Same deal on this property. I actually wanted to use creative financing because I don't want to use my own money, but also we didn't have a ton of money as well. So this one we actually got a partner on, my mom. She told me we had done a flip before, and she was like, if you want to do something again, let me know. And she's really the money part, and I do all the work part. So we actually put this one in her name only on the mortgage. And then I asked the seller if he would do any sort of seller financing. And he said he can't do the whole thing, but he could do up to around $100,000. So then we just said, okay, can you just seller finance the down payment? And he agreed to that.
Nice.